Hopefully you had a very good holiday season. If not, we're here to cheer you up. As always, one half your host, Craig Allen. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Craig Allen FNP. With me to my left, to your right, Matt Allen on the respective socials. We make it so easy at Matt Allen FNP. And the reason why I say that is because whether it was good or whether it was bad, 2022 is the year of Slava Claus. We have the UFC debut of Russia's Viacheslav Borshchev, and I can't wait for it because listen, 2021 we had some nice kickboxers come into the UFC. If you're a fan of Melzik Bogdasarian, you can get excited for this fight. If you like Giga Chikadze, who's in our main event, then you're gonna like Borshchev. He brings a very, very exciting style. He's a former K1 champ. He definitely has all that you want to see out of a striker. And oh, by the way, just made his way from Russia for fun to go to Team Alpha Male, stuck around on a P1 visa. Now he's working at the gym. He's training with the boys, and he's adding to his grappling with Uriah Faber, who has had a bad week. Now, when I look at this fight for Borshchev, an absolute pure striker at the highest level. And when he gets taken down, he can get himself into some sticky situations. But so far in his career, he's been able to pop back up to his feet for the most part. He's taking on Dakota Bush, a guy out of whether it's Westside MMA, whether it's the Pit MMA with Jake Collier, who I see in a lot of his Instagram posts, or Glory MMA and Fitness with a guy that trains at Westside, and TJ Brown, who's also on this card. Dakota Bush is one of those guys that it's balls to the wall. And for his nickname, it's Harry Balls. Well, it's just Harry. So you should expect that in his fights because this guy strikes with reckless abandon and he works the takedowns to great effect. I think we're going to get a very interesting fight in somewhat of a clash of styles here.
Is Dakota Bush the heir apparent to Clay Guida's throne of I'm always doing something? Because he does. You set it up perfectly. Like, he's just a very active fighter. No matter what it is in a fight, he's going to be doing something. And that is a great thing. Because how often do we say, oh, this fighter's very technical, they're very good, but they just don't have the activity to really go out there and take rounds from people. Like, Paul Felder kind of had that problem. Very technical fighter, had good but not great power, so he could get knockouts, but he didn't have the craziest level of volume. So if it did go to the scorecards, you'd always be kind of worried, because he'd land clean shots but not really knockout blows. Dakota Bush is not Paul Felder at striking, but he is always doing something, so they're kind of at the opposite end of that scale. I'm very interested to see the future for both of these guys moving forward, because with Slava Borshchev, I don't really know what his future is in the UFC and really in MMA, because you would kind of set it up, and I'll take it a step further. He's not just a pure striker. Like, he's just a striker and that's it. I don't think he even grapples that much in his spare time. Now, of course he does. But when you watch him in the cage, he very much is a kickboxer, just sort of transplanted into MMA rules. It is interesting to see because with some people, Alex Pereira now being in the UFC, you can get pretty far with that. Now, of course, he's arguably one of the best kickboxers like of our generation. He's been able to scale weight classes, so of course it's a little bit different. But there are some similarities in their styles because if you go back and watch some of Borshchev's fights, his takedown defense is non-existent, and he's very reactionary with a lot of what he does. He's not somebody who can kind of tell what his opponent's going to do in the grappling realm of things before they do it. It's something Dan Hardy always used to talk about. There's guys who are natural strikers, and there's guys who are natural grapplers. With Dan Hardy talking about himself, he said, okay, on the feet, I can just kind of flow. I don't need to think about what I'm doing. I've done it for so long. All that memory, it's almost in my nervous system, for instance. Like, it's that embedded into me. But with the grappling, it was okay. I was kind of a step behind. I'd have to think about what I was doing, and then I could set it up. With Borshchev, I think he is that point just blown up 1,000 times. Because with his striking, it is very pure. And if you do give him distance and just time to set everything up, you're going to get knocked out. He does one thing I really like before I pass it on to you. When you do pressure him, he doesn't deal well if you pressure him with your wrestling. But if you try to pressure him with your striking, he's really good at kicking out that lead leg to off-balance you. It's something Alexander Volkanovski does very well. Again, I'm using some examples from the best fighters in the UFC, but it's a great way to off-balance your opponent. And in Borshchev's last fight against Chris Duncan, who wasn't the best fighter in the world, if we're all being honest.
No, Chris Duncan's good.
He is, but I just didn't think he did enough when he got the top position. That's a story for another day. But anyways, what he was able to do with that knockout blow did show you sort of the best version of what Borshchev could be in the UFC. So I guess my question to you is, do you think he will be one of these Michael Oleksiejczuk fighters who we can sell the best version of him, and it's wow, this guy could be in the top 10, top 15, or do you think he could be the other side of that coin to where it is we could sell a great package on him, but there's a lot of detractors too?
This is what I have to say. It's very difficult to tell the ceiling on Borshchev. That's why it's tough to talk about this fight, because if you look at it for him, him, I gotta say this. He had 2 boxing fights. Pro in 2019, he won both of them. He was a K1 champion in 2010 and 2011. He had 18 pro wins in kickboxing out of 20 fights. He comes into MMA, and he fights 0-0 David Marquez. They're both making their pro debuts. He knocks him out in 55 seconds. That's pretty cool. So his next fight, he takes on 4-1 Ali Zebian. He beats him by decision. Ali Zebian's actually a pretty good fighter, and in that fight, again, Zebian will strike a little bit, and as soon as he strikes, Borshchev brings his guard way up, and all of a sudden, lower tier's totally exposed, and he gets taken down at will. Now, obviously, he wins that fight. He lands the cleaner, crisper shots, and for Zebian, he carries a lot of weight, and he really does tire out as the fights go on. So he wins that fight, takes on William Starks. That was a back and forth fight. I really did enjoy that one. Now, again, split decisions, call it what it is. I actually might be surprised if Fight Night Picks fans had it 29-28 for Starks and not for Borshchev.
I know who you're picking in this fight.
So that's a first. But when I look at that one, it was really tricky because Starks was able to control large amounts of time on the ground. And you hate to kind of see that when they strike. Obviously, Borshchev landed the cleaner, harder shots, but it was a bit of a back and forth. And again, I scored it for Starks. Then he takes on, and this is the worst part of it, Ali Zebian's a pretty good fighter. William Starks is a pretty good fighter too. So you have close fights with those two guys. They're both decisions. One you win unanimous, one you lose by split. Then he fights 2-2 Corey Delaney with Titan FC.
That was a mismatch.
And it's an absolute drop off a cliff in competition. And when you look at the fight, I gotta throw it up there. The Titan FC graphic for this one's a joke. They didn't even watch any tape on these guys because they said that Borshchev should take it to the ground just because he went to trains at Team Alpha Male. It's ridiculous. Pay attention. But when he takes on Corey Delaney, Delaney took that graphic to heart because they told him he should stand and strike. And what did Delaney do? He flopped around the octagon, chased him around, threw a bunch of shots, and then at the end of it, Borshchev finishes it on the ground and pound. So good win. So then he goes from there to taking on Kenley St. Louis, who's 3-3, but actually looked pretty good in that fight. He drops Borshchev with a right cross at one point, like face plants him off the canvas, and then Borshchev rallies back. And the good thing to see about that, and Paul Felder mentioned it in the lead into Borshchev's fight on Contender Series, was the fact that he's able to withstand some pressure and some adversity in these fights and fight back and come back to great effect. In that fight in the second round against Kenley St. Louis is gassed in the second round. Borshchev is too, to a certain degree, but he ends up getting the finish. And then against Chris Duncan, Duncan didn't really take advantage of the top pressure very well. I think he's a guy that you're going to see for a very long time. He had a lot of experience over with Bellator, one of Scotland's hottest prospects. Unfortunate that Paul Craig, is he retired? Maybe. I don't know. But in that fight, Borshchev looked great, and then that left hook knockout, man. That was disgusting. So we get this fight coming up here where we haven't talked a lot about Dakota Bush, and I'd like to because, again, training at the Pit, at Westside, at Glory MMA and Fitness, you absolutely love to see it. Training with guys, not just James Krause, but James Kelleher over there, as well as TJ Brown. And for Bush, pushes a crazy pace, takes guys down, unless you're Austin Hubbard, and we'll have to see how that factors in. He took that short notice fight, Matt, against Hubbard. He had a very close and competitive first round, but like his fight against Jalil Willis, a guy who can wrestle and is pretty good at 170, but when they fought, Willis missed weight, and in that one, Bush wins the first round, second round, third round, all Willis. Same thing in the Hubbard fight. So maybe that could happen, but Borshchev is not a fighter like Willis or like Hubbard.
But I think both these guys are kind of in the same boat cardio-wise, to where if they do fight a smart fight, then they can go 3 rounds. But if they fight their opponent's style of fight, then they will get tired. But both guys, the holes that both guys have in their game, the opponent can take advantage of. Because Dakota Bush, yes, he does do a lot on the feet, but he also leaves himself wide open on the feet when he does do a lot. It's kind of my Aljamain Sterling Piotr Jan point, to where if you're doing a lot, you're almost telling me more than I need to know. And that's my problem with Dakota Bush in this matchup. I think he could go out there and have one of those performances similar to Bilal Muhammad versus Diego Lima, to where he's taken down Borshchev, and although Borshchev in this situation might be the better striker, he's just always on the defense, and I think that I might make Dakota Bush look really good. But this is my problem. Dakota Bush does get tired as the fight goes on, and this is what I worry about for both guys, honestly, in the third round. I think Borshchev's at least going to keep his power in the third round to where if he hits Bush one time, he might be able to put him out with anything. He does have that kind of power. I worry about Bush's ability to go out there and just get a takedown in that third round when he does fatigue. Now, maybe he is able to do that, but I think that's going to be the tipping point of this fight. I think both guys are going to have their moments early. I think Bush might be able to get a takedown. Borshchev might be able to get back up to his feet. But I'm very, very curious to see how both these guys look in the later end of the second round, in the third round, because that's really going to be who's going to win the fight.
The odds on this one, the comeback for Slava Borshchev, opened a plus 125 underdog. He's a minus 187 over on best fight odds. For Dakota Bush, open to minus 145. He is a plus 155. And if you want to have fun with it, Borshchev is the biggest mover and shaker on this card. The Tapology votes, surprise to us, they are to you. 1,290 total votes, 86% Borshchev, 71% by knockout, 14% that have Bush, 63% by decision. I am in the very small minority going with Dakota Bush in this fight because from Borshchev, I love the striking. People can call me a BGL, they can call me a hater, and haters will say that I don't know about Borshchev, but let me tell you this, pal. He looks great with Team Alpha Male, and if you've seen anything out of what the group, I guess you could say, over there has been able to do with Ricardo Ramos, man, that guy looks like a totally different fighter since he switched gyms, and he's added a little bit more to his ground game. Look at what he did to Bill Algeo. Wasn't even close with all the takedowns. Borshchev can definitely be there one day. I just don't think it's going to be his fight in this one. With the inexperience in just MMA, I think it's going to be one of those ones that Bush is going to be able to exploit here.
I think this is one-way traffic, one way or the other, so I feel like one of us is going to look stupid no matter what happens, because Bush is either going to go out there, wrestle his way to like a 30-25, and everybody's going to be like, oh, Slava Claus, go back to the North Pole, or Borshchev's going to knock him out with like a wild uppercut off a takedown attempt, and we're all going to be thinking, oh, well, maybe he should be like Santa Claus, not just Slava Claus. I'm going to pick Borshchev, though. I do like the fact that he does train with a primary group of wrestlers, and that is the one big thing that he has to fix. Here's the thing. If Borshchev had Chad Mendez's wrestling, he'd be so good. Like, he'd be one of the best fighters in the world, but that is such a big hole in his game. I do worry about his ability to get back up to his feet. I can admit that, and I do worry about his ability to defend the takedown, but like you had said, and like I'll echo, I like the fact that he is training with a lot of wrestlers, so hopefully he can land that one big shot.
We're split on the pick. Matt going with the former K1 world champ in Slava Claus, Slava Borshchev. I'm going with Dakota Bush in this fight with the wrestling, striking combination. Let us know down below in the comments section who you have between Bush and Borshchev. We get some big-time fights coming up on this card, including a big-time main event at 145 between Calvin Kattar and the man himself, Giga Chikadze. You're not going to want to miss. Keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks. We always say, let's get into it.